by taking refuge. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. I go for refuge in the Buddha. I go for refuge in the Dharma. I go for refuge in the Sangha. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. All right, we'll start with our 15 minutes of seated meditation. Chant the Gatha on opening the sutras. This Dharma, incomparably profound and minutely subtle, is rarely encountered, even in hundreds of thousands of millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, hold, and maintain it. May we completely realize the true mind of all Buddhas. Okay, relax. Get comfy. For tonight, we are getting the Dharma from Venerable Wan Young.
Howdy, friends. So tonight I'm going to talk about fear and fire. Happy New Year. So I was recently read a real good article in one of the recent issues of Mindfulness Bell. It was written by Jane Ellen Kombelek. And she was summarized and then riffed off of one of the Buddha's Jataka tales. Those tales about past lives that he had had and so forth. And so there's one where it's about this parrot and lived in this forest, and a forest fire breaks out. And there's some of the animals are getting trapped by the fire and they're going to get killed. And so this parrot, it's like, well, I got to do something. So it flies off to the river, scoops up some of the water with its little beak and goes and puts those few little drops of water onto the fire. And then keeps going back and forth, exhausting itself, getting singed by the fire. And there's a whole bunch of gods sitting up in one of the heavens looking down this and just laughing at the ridiculousness of this bird trying to put out this fire with little bits of water from its carrying in its beak. But one of the gods is real sympathetic and goes down to talk to the parrot and says, hey, listen, buddy, I mean, this is just so awesome what you're trying to do. I'm totally inspired by you, but you're just going to get yourself killed. You just can't help these other animals. You should just save yourself and take off. And the parrot says, listen, buddy, I don't need any advice from you. What I need is your help. And the god was so moved by this that he just started bawling, and the tears came down and doused all the flames and saved the critters. And so, of course, I'm sure y'all, as soon as I start talking about fire in a Buddhist context, you're all immediately thinking, okay, we're talking about craving, because of course, Siddhartha used the image of fire for craving, since that's surely one of the earliest teachings or images that he offered people. And here, this idea of helping to extinguish all the flames, this an image of helping others to extinguish their craving. In other words, nirvana, right? But of course, today we got with driven by climate change. I mean, we've got like the world like literally on fire, right? I mean, things, got a bunch of rain and snow this last year out west in the U.S. So it's not so bad now, but the West has just been terrible. Australia, Greece, like Syria and Israel had this last year had a bunch of terrible forest fires. And so, of course, this thing, what can I do with my little beak picking up these tiny little bit of water? But of course, there's 8 billion of us. That's a lot of beaks. That's a lot of water. Really, we've got plenty of water collectively to extinguish the cravings that contribute to climate change. But one of Kombelek's main points in that article was getting us to look at and engage the fears that we experience. And and from that, prompting us to see what we can do with our own little beak, picking up our own tiny little bits of water. Well, for years now, I've read 2 newspapers every morning. Because I want to be an informed, engaged citizen. I want to learn about my community, my my country, my world. But this also gives me plenty of opportunity to learn about myself, because I, over the years, have experienced a lot of anger while reading the newspaper. And so, of course, I have to engage, as any good Buddhist would do, oh, where's this anger coming from? And I mean, it didn't require any great insight. It was pretty clear that it coming from, a lot of it coming from fear. Fear in terms of like actual physical safety of myself and my family, finding that my our actual physical safety is believing, or at least perceiving it to be, really so much grounded in our democracy and the rule of law. And so when I read in the newspaper about people seemingly doing things, threatening those things, threatening democracy and the rule of law, I see those as threats, to myself, like actual physical, literal, physical threats. Because this fear that as things like democracy and the rule of law break down, become subject to arbitrary authority, or I should say, like much more arbitrary authority than what already exists, and in that the potentials for violence are terrible. So this fear comes up, and then I turn it into anger at those people who I read about in the newspaper, who I perceive as the source of those threats. Well, reading about fear in a political context recently, and there's a psychologist who was talking about one of a common fear reaction that people have is to then, when you get serious fear, is to want to retreat into a group of folks who you perceive as being like yourself. And so, man, it just doesn't seem like there is just a cycle of fear in America and lots of places in the world, where you have a group of folks driven by fear, cultivated by demagogues. I mean, of course, fear is the currency of demagogues, right? And so as people get all afraid and then start reacting, retreating into themselves, into groups of folks like them, and doing things that seem hostile to democracy, and then other folks get afraid of them, like me, and then retreat into themselves. And I've heard so many times over the last 5-6 years, people saying like, "Oh, I am so done with those other folks. Like even folks in their family, like I'm not even going to talk to folks like that anymore." There's that fear reaction, that retreating into folks like oneself. And so then when the other side starts doing that, then the first group perceives the other folks as even more threatening than they already had. And then it just keeps going back and forth in this cycle of fear, increasing factionalism and polarization, all of which continually intensifies the possibilities of violence. And of course, in the US and elsewhere around the world, we've seen political violence resulting from, coming out of this cycle. So again, what can I do as this parrot with a tiny little beak here in a country, in a world on fire? Well, it's also like, what can I not do, which is to retreat into that sameness, to cutting myself off from other folks. I can not direct my anger and fear towards individuals. I mean, at the very least, I can break my role in that cycle of fear. Another thing I've been reading lately is some of Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches and essays on nonviolent resistance. And one of the things he talks about in there is not just like, the outward sort of actions, outward nonviolent action, but he also talked about nonviolence of the spirit, sort of the attitude that one takes. And in the context of nonviolent resistance and civil rights movement, talking about the importance over and over again, say, listen, you can't see this as a conflict between black and white people. You got to see this as a conflict between justice and injustice. because the goal is not to, beat the other side, but is, quote, redemption and reconciliation, quote, the creation of a beloved community. That in the end, what comes out of their nonviolent struggle is, looking for a community, but that drawing everybody together into a single beloved community. And here's folks to see that the one's supposed opponents as also victims of that same system that they were victims of, to therefore not to seek to humiliate or seek revenge on those other folks, but instead to gain friendship and understanding of them and with them, to cultivate them as allies in seeking justice. So in the context that I've been talking about here for myself, it means that security, that safety, those universal needs, achieving those for all people, not just for my supposed team. And then you think about that you get that fear reaction, that retreating into sameness. I mean, that is an othering, right? It's pulling up this boundary. There's self and other. There's my group and their group. And this is an example of what King referred to as a violence of the spirit. I remember real early on, when we started studying with my teacher Andre. He and some of you might remember this as well. We'd often talk about how his role as a teacher, Zen teacher, was not to give students anything, but to take it all away. And so here, what do I got to give up? Give up my anger, my fear, give enemies. And then instead take up metta, loving kindness, loving friendliness, whatever you want to call it. And so in doing that with just my little beak, picking up those drops of water and dousing the flames of my own cravings and fears, breaking my part in that cycle of fear. And in the end, I mean, that's sort of that non-violence of the spirit, I think, is the thing that's going to be more likely to produce or be more effective in producing the security and safety that this universal needs that we all have, much more so than fear and the politics of domination. Even if, quote, my side achieves victory. And I mean, it just means more violence, because if you achieve that victory through the domination of others, then it's like, well, you've always got to keep the other folks down, which means constantly generating resistance, continually creating more violence. So instead, in love, in non-violence of the spirit, that I think much more likely, or everyone is more likely to find the sort of safety that we all need. But of course, there's no God who's going to come down and cry and douse all those flames for us. There's just us, 8 million beaks, and a whole lot of work to do.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you for your teaching. Let's go back and have another 15 minutes of seated meditation. Let's chant the Heart Sutra. Mahaprajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when practicing deeply the Prajna Paramita, perceives that all five skandhas are empty and is safe from all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. That which is form is emptiness. That which is emptiness, form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They do not appear or disappear, are not tainted or pure, do not increase or decrease. Therefore, in emptiness, no form, no feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realm of eyes, and so forth, until no realm of mind consciousness, no ignorance, and also no extinction of it, and so forth, until no old age and death, and also no extinction of them, no suffering, no origination, no stopping, no path, no cognition, also no attainment, with nothing to attain. The bodhisattva depends on prajna paramita, and the mind is no hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fears exist. Far apart from every perverted view, one dwells in nirvana. In the three worlds, all Buddhas depend on prajna paramita and attain anuttara samyak sambodhi. Therefore know that prajna paramita is the great transcendent mantra, is the great bright mantra, is the utmost mantra, is the supreme mantra, which is able to relieve all suffering and is true, not false. So proclaim the prajna paramita mantra, proclaim the mantra which says gate gate para gate parasamgate bodhisvaha, gate gate para gate parasamgate bodhisvaha, gate gate para gate parasamgate bodhisvaha. We'll do our personal dedications of merit. I have a couple that I'll put in, and I'll leave some space open for you to dedicate merit to whomever you like. All sentient beings are one seamless body and pass quickly from birth to death. We remember those who cared for us and are gone, those who were ill, those who were at war, who were hungry, and who were in pain. May they heal and have peace. We especially dedicate our service to all victims of artificial borders from Russia, Ukraine, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, West Bank, Gaza, Yemen. Mike Gingy Wood, anybody you would like to add in?
Barry and Clinton.
I would like to add Melanie Bixby, Katara, and also put in my 2 cents for all those suffering in the Middle East.
Who else?
Catherine Young, Bailey Sheridan, and Joanne Sheridan.
And anyone else?
Just one final more for the Palestinians and all my friends and family and
Any others? All beings in the 10 directions, subject to the greed, hatred, and delusions of themselves and others. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Maha Prajna Paramita. And we'll recite our faith and practice vow. I will never retreat and will be firm in my mind in this correct Dharma. I will escape the samsaric cycle of birth and death and definitely will see my original face. I will be sure to inherit the life of insight of the Buddha and save all sentient beings. Brother Hangdell?
Infinite realms of light and dark convey the Buddha mind. Birds and trees and stars and we ourselves come forth in perfect harmony. We practice and recite this for all beings in grateful thanks to our many guides along the way.
And we'll recite the 4 great Bodhisattva vows. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to help them all. Delusions are countless. We vow to see through them all. Opportunities to awaken are infinite. We vow to embrace them all. The Buddha way is endless. We vow to embody it. Life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes swiftly by and opportunities to awaken are easily lost. Strive to realize your true nature and do not squander your time by night or day. And I'll extinguish the candles. And